People think my life has been shaped only by fame, heartbreak, and the people everyone already knows. But this part of my story didn't begin with a producer, an ex, or a headline. It began with someone no one ever talks about. A fan I met on a night when everything inside me felt like it was falling apart. Benny and I weren't supposed to be in Lisbon that week. We had flown in quietly, almost impulsively, after canceling a string of sessions in Los Angeles. I needed air. I needed distance. I needed to remember what it felt like to walk down a street without carrying the weight of 100 expectations on my shoulders. Lisbon felt like the right kind of escape. The hills, the light, the way the city seemed to breathe slowly, like it had seen centuries of pain and beauty and learned to hold both gently. Benny didn't ask questions. He just packed a bag, booked 2 tickets, and said, "Let's go somewhere no one's looking for us." We stayed in a small guest house in Alfama, the old neighborhood where the streets are narrow and steep, where laundry hangs between balconies and fado music drifts through open windows at night. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't Instagram perfect. It was real. And that's exactly what I needed. For the first 2 days, we did nothing. We wandered, we ate pastéis de nata from a tiny pasteleria near the Sé Cathedral. We rode the old yellow tram that rattles up and down the hills. We sat by the Tagus River and watched the sunset behind the 25 de Abril bridge, painting the water in shades of gold and rose. Benny would hold my hand and say nothing, which is one of the things I love most about him. He knows when silence is the kindest thing you can offer someone. But beneath the calm, I was unraveling. The album we'd been working on felt hollow. Every lyric I wrote sounded like someone else's voice. Every melody felt borrowed. I kept asking myself the same question over and over. What am I even doing this for anymore? I had spent so much of my life trying to prove something to the industry, to critics, to people who didn't even know me. And somewhere along the way, I forgot the only person I ever needed to prove anything to was myself. On the 3rd night, we decided to walk through Bairro Alto, the neighborhood that comes alive after dark. The streets were buzzing with energy, people laughing, music spilling out of bars, and the smell of grilled sardines and red wine in the air. It felt alive in a way I hadn't felt in months. We found a small cafe tucked into a corner, dim and warm, with mismatched chairs and walls covered in old azulejo tiles. The kind of place where nobody cares who you are. We ordered 2 bicas, strong Portuguese espressos, and sat by the window watching the world move around us. That's when she walked in. At first, I didn't notice her. She was young, maybe in her early 20s, wearing a faded denim jacket and carrying a worn leather bag. She looked nervous, like she was searching for someone or something. Her eyes scanned the room, and then they landed on me. My stomach tightened. I braced myself for the usual. The phone raised for a selfie, the excited voice, and the rush of energy that would pull me out of this quiet moment I'd been clinging to. But she didn't move. She just stood there for a second, staring. And then she looked down at her bag. She hesitated. I could see her debating with herself, like she didn't want to intrude, but felt like she had to say something. Benny noticed too. He squeezed my hand under the table. "You okay?" he whispered. I nodded. "Yeah, it's fine." She walked over slowly, clutching something in her hand. When she reached our table, she didn't speak right away. She just looked at me with these wide, watery eyes like she was trying to find the right words but couldn't. "Hi," she finally said, her voice soft and accented. "I am sorry to bother you. I know you probably get this all the time." I smiled gently. "It's okay. What's your name?" "Marta," she said. She glanced at Benny, then back at me. I wanted to give you this." She held out her hand, and in it was a small, crumpled piece of paper, an old concert ticket. The edges were torn, the print faded. I could barely make out the date. 2016, one of my revival tour shows. I took it carefully, like it was something fragile. "You kept this?" I asked. She nodded. That night, it was the first time in months I had left my apartment. I was going through something really dark. I almost didn't go, but my sister convinced me. She said, "Just come. You don't have to stay if it's too much." Her voice cracked a little. Benny and I both stayed quiet, letting her speak. "I didn't expect to feel anything," Marta continued. "I thought I was too far gone, but then you sang The Heart Wants What It Wants, and I broke. I cried through the whole song, and I realized I wasn't as numb as I thought I was. I could still feel something. Even if it was just pain, it was something." Tears were streaming down her face now, but she was smiling. "You didn't heal me that night, but you helped me remember I wasn't gone, that I was still here." I felt my own eyes start to burn. I reached out and took her hand. "Martha," she shook her head quickly, "I don't want to take up your time. I saw you sitting here and I thought maybe this was my chance to say thank you, to tell you that what you do matters, even when you think it doesn't." She let go of my hand, took a step back, and smiled one more time. "Obrigada, Selena, for everything." And then she turned around and walked out of the cafe, disappearing into the crowded street. I sat there, staring at the ticket in my hand. My chest felt tight. Benny put his arm around me, and I leaned into him, trying to hold myself together. "You okay?" he asked softly. I nodded, but I wasn't. I was shaking. Not from sadness, but from something deeper. Something I hadn't felt in so long I'd almost forgotten what it was. Hope. The next morning, I woke up before Benny. The sun was just starting to rise, casting soft light through the shutters of our room. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling, replaying the night before in my mind. Marta's words kept echoing. "You helped me remember I wasn't gone." I got out of bed quietly and walked to the window. Our room overlooked the rooftops of Alfama, a sea of terracotta tiles stretching toward the river. The city was waking up slowly. A woman shaking out a rug from her balcony, a man walking his dog down the cobblestone hill, the distant clang of a tram bell. I thought about all the moments in my career when I'd felt like I was disappearing. The tabloids, the breakups dissected in public, the constant pressure to be perfect, to be strong, to be inspiring, even when I was barely holding on. I'd built so many walls around myself just to survive. But somewhere along the way, I'd forgotten why I started making music in the first place. It wasn't for the charts or the awards or the approval. It was because singing was the only way I knew how to feel honest, to feel real. Marta had reminded me of that, and it terrified me because it meant I couldn't keep hiding behind the walls anymore. Benny stirred behind me. "You're up early," he mumbled, his voice thick with sleep. I turned and smiled. "Couldn't sleep." He sat up, rubbing his eyes. "Still thinking about last night?" I nodded. "Yeah." He patted the bed next to him, and I walked over and sat down. He wrapped his arms around me, pulling me close. "Talk to me," he said. I sighed. "I don't know, Benny. It's just, she saw something in me that I don't see anymore, and I don't know how to get it back." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "You know what I think? I think you've been so busy trying to prove you're strong that you forgot it's okay to be human, to be messy, to be unsure." I looked up at him. "But what if I don't have anything left to say? What if I've used up all my honesty and now I'm just empty?" He shook his head. "You're not empty, Sel. You're just tired. There's a difference." I wanted to believe him, but doubt is a heavy thing. It sits in your chest and makes everything feel harder than it should be. Later that morning, we decided to explore more of the city. We walked down to the Baisha district, where the streets are wide and lined with elegant buildings. We passed street performers playing guitar, vendors selling roasted chestnuts, and shops displaying beautiful hand-painted tiles. I found a slim poetry book with a blue cover. I couldn't understand the words, but the title caught my eye. Onde a luz não alcança, where the light doesn't reach. I bought it without thinking. Maybe because it felt like a metaphor for where I was, or maybe because I wanted to believe that even in the dark, there was still something worth holding on to. That afternoon, we took the train out to Belém, the neighborhood along the river where the monument to the discoveries stands tall against the sky. We walked along the waterfront, the wind whipping our hair, the smell of salt and sea filling the air. Benny pointed to the monument. "You know what that is?" I shook my head. "It's a tribute to the Portuguese explorers who sailed into the unknown. They didn't know where they were going. They just trusted the journey." I looked at him. "Are you trying to make a point?" He grinned. "Maybe." I laughed for the first time in days. It felt good, light, human. We sat on a bench near the river and shared a box of pasteles de Belém, the famous custard tarts that people line up for. They were warm, flaky, dusted with cinnamon and sugar. We didn't talk much. We just sat there, eating slowly, watching boats drift by. At one point, Benny turned to me and said, "You know what I love about you?" I raised an eyebrow. "What?" "You care so much, even when it hurts you, even when it would be easier not to." I felt my throat tighten. "I don't know if that's a good thing, Benny." "It is," he said firmly, "because it means you're real, and real is rare." I leaned my head on his shoulder. "I'm scared," I admitted. "I'm scared that I've lost it, the thing that made me me." He kissed the top of my head. "You haven't lost it, Sel. You're just looking for it in the wrong places." "Where should I be looking?" "Right here," he said, tapping my chest gently. "It's still in there. You just have to trust it again." That night, we went to a fado house in Alfama. Fado is this hauntingly beautiful Portuguese music, raw, emotional, filled with saudade, a word that means a deep longing for something or someone you've lost. We sat in the candlelit room, surrounded by locals and a few other travelers, and listened as a woman stood up and sang. Her voice was rough and aching, like it carried 1,000 untold stories. She sang in Portuguese, so I didn't understand the words, but I felt every single one. Tears streamed down my face before I even realized I was crying. Benny reached over and held my hand, and I squeezed it tight. When the song ended, the room was silent for a moment. Then soft applause. The singer nodded, her eyes still glistening, and sat back down. I turned to Benny and whispered, "I want to feel like that again. Like what I'm saying actually means something." He smiled. "You will, Sel. I promise." The next few days in Lisbon became something of a turning point for me, though I didn't realize it at the time. Benny and I kept exploring the Chiado district with its grand theaters and literary cafes, the LX factory with its street art and creative energy, the Miradoro de Santa Lucia, where you can see the whole city spread out like a postcard. But it wasn't just the sights that were changing me. It was the rhythm of the place. The way people moved here, unhurried, present, alive. The way they lingered over meals, talked to strangers, sang in the streets without needing a reason. I started writing again. Not for an album, not for anyone, just for me. I'd sit at the small wooden table in our guest house with the window open and the smell of grilled fish drifting up from the street, and I'd write whatever came to mind. Some of it was terrible, some of it didn't make sense, but some of it felt true. One afternoon, I wrote about Martha, about how she had walked into that cafe carrying her pain like something precious, something she wasn't ashamed of. and how she had given me permission to do the same. Then he read it later and said, "This is it, Sel. This is what people need to hear." I shook my head. It's too raw. Raw is honest, and honest is what people connect to. I wanted to believe him, but the fear was still there, whispering that vulnerability was weakness, that people would use it against me. One morning, we decided to take a day trip to Sintra, a town in the hills about an hour from Lisbon. It's known for its fairy tale palaces and misty forests, like something out of a dream. We visited the Quinta de Regalera, a Gothic estate with secret tunnels, spiral staircases, and a well that descends deep into the earth. At the bottom of the well, you can look up and see the sky like a perfect circle of light. I stood at the bottom, staring up, and I thought about how sometimes you have to go down into the dark before you can find your way back to the light. Benny called down from the top, "You okay down there?" I smiled. "Yeah, I'm okay." When I climbed back up, he was waiting for me with a goofy grin. "You looked like you were having some kind of spiritual moment." "Maybe I was," I said. He laughed. "Good, you deserve one." That night, we had dinner at a small restaurant in Sintra before heading back to Lisbon. The owner, a woman named Teresa, recognized me but didn't make a fuss. She just smiled warmly and said, "Welcome. Sit wherever you like." We ordered bacalhau à brás, salted cod with eggs, onions, and shoestring potatoes, and vinho verde, a light, slightly sparkling wine. The food was simple but perfect. Halfway through the meal, Teresa came over and sat down with us. "You like Lisbon?" she asked in accented English. I nodded. "I love it. It feels peaceful." She smiled. "Yes, Lisbon is good for the soul. We have a saying here, devagar se vai ao longe. Slowly, you go far." I repeated the phrase softly. "Slowly, you go far." She nodded. "You don't need to rush. Life is not a race." After dinner, Benny and I walked through the quiet streets of Sintra, hand in hand. The air was cool, filled with the scent of pine and eucalyptus. The town was almost empty, just a few stray cats and the sound of our footsteps on the cobblestones. "I feel different here," I said. "Different how?" Benny asked. "Lighter, like I don't have to carry so much." He squeezed my hand. "Maybe that's because you're finally letting go." I thought about that. Letting go. It sounded so simple, but in practice, it was the hardest thing I'd ever tried to do. The next day, back in Lisbon, something unexpected happened. We were walking through the Mercado da Ribeira, the famous food market near Cais do Sodré, when I heard someone call my name. I turned, and there she was again. Marta. She looked just as surprised as I was. "Selena?" I smiled. "Marta, hi." She laughed nervously. "I can't believe I'm running into you again. The city is not that small." Benny grinned. "Maybe it's fate." Marta blushed. "Maybe." We ended up sitting down at one of the market stalls and sharing a plate of amejuas a bouillon pato, clams in garlic and white wine. It felt easy, natural, like catching up with an old friend. Marta told us about her life. She was a student at the University of Lisbon studying literature. She loved poetry, especially Fernando Pessoa, a famous Portuguese poet who wrote under different personas because he believed we all contain multitudes. "I think that's why I connected to your music, because you weren't afraid to show all your different sides. The strong one, the broken one, the hopeful one." I felt my chest tighten. "I don't know if I've been doing that lately." She tilted her head. "Why not?" I hesitated. "Because it's easier to hide, to pretend I'm okay all the time." She nodded slowly. "I understand. But you know what I think? I think the world doesn't need another person pretending to be okay. The world needs more people brave enough to say, I'm not okay, and that's okay too. Benny looked at me and smiled. See, I told you. Marta stayed with us for a while longer, talking about books and music and life. Before she left, she gave me a hug and said, Thank you for letting me share this with you. It means more than you know. After she walked away, Benny put his arm around me. You know what's funny? What? You came here looking for something, and I think maybe you're starting to find it. I looked at him. What do you think I came here looking for? He smiled. Permission. To be exactly who you are. Enjoying the story? Hit the like button, subscribe, drop your comment, and turn on the notifications. Let's keep going. The last few days in Lisbon felt different. There was a shift inside me, subtle but undeniable. Like something that had been clenched tight for years was finally beginning to loosen. Benny and I spent a lot of time just being. We'd wake up late, have breakfast at a pasteleria near our guest house, then wander wherever our feet took us. No plans, no pressure, just presence. One afternoon, we found ourselves at the São Jorge Castle, perched high on a hill overlooking the entire city. The walls were ancient, weathered by centuries of wind and sun. We walked along the ramparts, looking out over the terracotta rooftops, the shimmering river, the bridge stretching toward the horizon. This place has seen so much, I said quietly. Wars, kings, revolutions, and it's still standing. Benny nodded. Kind of like you. I looked at him. I don't always feel like I'm still standing. But you are. You're still here, and that counts for something. I thought about Marta again, about how she had survived her darkest moments and come out the other side. Not because she was strong, but because she was willing to keep going even when she didn't feel strong. Maybe that's what strength really is. Not the absence of pain, but the decision to keep moving through it. That evening, we went back to the Fado house in Alfama, the same one we'd been to before. This time, the simmer was different. A young man with a guitar and a voice that felt like velvet and gravel all at once. He sang a song called Lagrima, which means tear. I didn't need a translation. I could hear the sorrow, the longing, the quiet acceptance in every note. When the song ended, the room was silent. And then, spontaneously, someone started clapping. Not polite applause, but real, heartfelt appreciation. Others joined in, and soon the whole room was clapping, some people wiping their eyes. I turned to Benny. I want to do that. He looked at me surprised. What? Sing? I nodded. Not here, not now, but I want to make something that makes people feel like that. Something that doesn't hide. He smiled. Then do it. I'm scared. I know, but do it anyway. On our last night in Lisbon, we decided to have dinner at a rooftop restaurant in Bairro Alto. The view was breathtaking. The city lit up below us, the river glowing in the distance, the sky fading from pink to deep blue. We ordered polvo al lagarero, grilled octopus with olive oil and roasted potatoes, and a bottle of red wine from the Douro Valley. The food was rich and flavorful, the kind of meal that makes you slow down and savor every bite. Halfway through dinner, Benny raised his glass. He said, "A toast." I raised mine. To what? "To you," he said, "for being brave enough to come here, for being brave enough to let yourself feel." I felt tears prick my eyes. I don't feel very brave. That's what makes it brave, he said. Doing it even when you're terrified. We clinked glasses and I took a sip of wine. It was warm and full-bodied, with notes of cherry and spice. It tasted like the earth, like time, like something worth waiting for. After dinner, we walked through the streets of Bairro Alto one last time. The neighborhood was alive with music and laughter, people spilling out of bars and onto the sidewalks.
We didn't join them. We just walked, hand in hand, soaking it all in. At one point, we passed a small art gallery with the door open. Inside, there was a single painting on the wall. A woman standing at the edge of the ocean, her back to the viewer, looking out at the waves. I stopped and stared at it. There was something about the way she stood, vulnerable but unafraid, like she was waiting for something but not desperate for it to come. Benny squeezed my hand. "What are you thinking?" I didn't answer right away. I just kept staring at the painting, trying to put words to the feeling rising in my chest. Finally, I said, "I'm thinking that maybe it's okay not to have all the answers. Maybe it's okay to just stand at the edge and see what comes." He smiled. "I think that's the smartest thing you've said all week." I laughed. "Really? That's the smartest?" "Yep," he said, grinning. "The rest was pretty average." I shoved him playfully, and we kept walking. When we got back to the guest house, I sat down at the table and pulled out my notebook. I wrote for hours, filling page after page with everything I'd been holding inside. The fear, the doubt, the hope, the gratitude. I wrote about Marta, about the woman singing fado with tears in her eyes, about Teresa and her quiet wisdom, about Benny, who never once asked me to be anything other than exactly who I was. And I wrote about myself, about the parts of me I'd been afraid to show. The messy parts, the uncertain parts, the parts that didn't have it all figured out. When I finally put the pen down, it was nearly 3 a.m. Benny was asleep in the next room, his breathing slow and steady. I walked to the window and looked out at the city one last time. The streets were quiet now, just a few lights still glowing in the distance. The stars were bright overhead, sharper than I'd ever seen them in Los Angeles. I thought about what Marta had said. "You helped me remember I wasn't gone." And I realized she had done the same for me. We left Lisbon the next morning. The flight back to Los Angeles felt longer than it should have, like I was leaving behind more than just a city. But I wasn't sad. I was different. Something had shifted in me during those days. Not in a loud, dramatic way, but in the quiet, steady way that real change always happens. Like roots growing deep underground where no one can see them. When we landed in LA, the noise hit me immediately. The crowds, the cameras, the emails and messages piling up on my phone. It was overwhelming. But this time, I didn't let it drown me. I went back into the studio the next week. Benny and I sat down with the album we'd been working on, and I told him, "I want to start over." He raised an eyebrow. "Start over? We've been working on this for months." "I know," I said, "but it's not honest. And I don't want to put something out into the world that doesn't feel true." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Okay, let's do it." So we did. We scrapped everything and started fresh. This time, I didn't try to write songs I thought people wanted to hear. I wrote songs I needed to say. I wrote about the pressure of being in the spotlight, about feeling lost and finding my way back, about the people who remind you of who you are when you forget, about fear and hope and everything in between. It wasn't easy. There were days when I wanted to quit, when the vulnerability felt like too much. But every time I thought about giving up, I'd remember Marta standing in that cafe, holding her torn concert ticket, telling me I'd helped her feel something when she thought she couldn't feel anything at all. And I'd keep going. The album came out 8 months later. It wasn't my biggest commercial success, but it was the one I was most proud of, because it was real. Because it was mine. People responded to it in ways I didn't expect. I got messages from fans saying the songs made them cry, made them feel seen, made them remember they weren't alone. Some of them said it saved their lives. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if music can save anyone. But I do know this: honesty has a way of reaching people. When you're brave enough to tell the truth about your own pain, it gives other people permission to do the same. And maybe that's what art is supposed to do. Not fix things, not provide answers, but remind us that we're all human,
And that being human means feeling everything: the joy, the sorrow, the fear, the hope. A few months after the album came out, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Marta. She'd somehow found my management's address and sent me a handwritten note.
It said, "Dear Selena, I listened to your new album. I cried through most of it. Thank you for being brave enough to share your heart. You reminded me again that I'm not alone. And I hope you know you're not alone either. With love and gratitude, Marta." I kept that letter in my notebook. I still have it. On the hard days, when the doubt creeps back in, I read it and remember why I do this. Not for the fame, not for the validation, but for the connection. For the moments when something I create reaches someone else and makes them feel a little less alone. Benny and I went back to Lisbon last year. We stayed in the same guest house, ate at the same restaurants, walked the same streets. It felt like coming home. We even went back to that cafe in Bairro Alto, the one where Marta first approached us. We ordered 2 bicas and sat by the window, just like before. This time, no one interrupted us. No one asked for a photo or a signature. We just sat there, holding hands, watching the world move around us. And I thought about how sometimes the smallest moments change everything. How a stranger with a torn concert ticket can remind you of who you are. How a city can hold you gently while you figure out what you need to let go of. Life is strange like that. You go looking for answers in the big, dramatic moments. But the real transformation happens in the quiet spaces, in the pauses, in the unexpected encounters that you almost miss because you're not paying attention. I learned something in Lisbon that I carry with me now. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to be strong all the time. You just have to be willing to show up, messy, uncertain, human, and trust that's enough. Because it is. It always has been. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all. That being human isn't something to hide. It's something to honor. Something to share. Something that connects us all in ways we can't always see, but can always feel. So if you're reading this and you're struggling, if you feel lost or empty or like you've used up all your hope, I want you to know you're still here. And that matters. It matters more than you think. Keep going. Keep feeling. Keep showing up even when it's hard. Because somewhere out there, someone is listening. Someone is watching. Someone needs to know that they're not alone. And maybe, just maybe, you're the one who reminds them. Just like Marta reminded me.
If you watched until here, thank you. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love reading your messages. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notifications so you never miss another story like this. And if you'd like to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee. Any amount helps a lot. Link in the pinned comment.